Welcome to Type Talks. Today we have 5 INFPs. Erica, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
I'm Erica. I'm an INFP, Enneagram 9 Wing 8. If you, I'll stop there. Ginger with a soul. Mike.
For sure. Ginger with a soul. Awesome. How about you, Mike?
Hi, Mike. I am I think nearly textbook INFP, and probably also textbook 9-wing 1. And I've just enjoyed having had the opportunity to know Joyce for multiple years now, online, and I think we hit it off immediately, and it's just stayed that way. So I'm glad to be here and meet all of you.
Yeah, I love Mike's positivity and just his good and kind spirit. So Shreya, how about you?
Where do I slice this? Hello there. I'm Shreya, Scribbles, namesake. So let's see. I met Joyce about a year ago, and it's been one long odyssey for me. And I go by the saying that I can't have a revolution where I don't dance in it. So here I am.
Awesome.
That's great. How about you, Hillary?
Okay, yeah. Hi guys, I'm Hillary. And I have a YouTube channel called INFxTV. You guys should check it out. I talk about like MBTI and Enneagram and just anything about like life, psychology, philosophy. Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm excited to be. Yeah, right. And I'm also an Enneagram 9. I think wing 8, but such a 9 thing to be like, I don't know.
You don't know regarding what?
She's merging with other people right now.
What? Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, you want to hear what I have to say? What?
Right.
You said something running. Well, I don't know. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. Because for Enneagram 9s, one of their like core features is that they are like kind of oblivious to themselves. And so the whole thing about 9 is like, oh, I relate to this and this and this and this and this, which really means like, what really are you? So the fact that I'm like, I'm not sure what wing I have, or like, it's just a very 9 thing.
Since it's on top of the Enneagram thing, we can relate to all the types in a certain way.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, I think INFPs in general could, regardless of if you're a 9. But I mean, you are, right? You said you're a 9, so.
4.
Oh, oops, sorry. I got you and Mike flipped. My bad.
I just had a instinctual inclination that I was 4 because of how much it really matched up with my life story and how much the same inclinations kept repeating everywhere I went. So I'm actually very instinctual regarding these things. I just knew I was an INFP. I knew I was a 4-wing.
Yeah.
That's neat.
For sure. And RJ, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm RJ. I'm also, of course, INFP. I think I'm not super well versed in Enneagram, but I think I'm 4 5-wing. I would say it seems to make sense. I am an architect. Professionally, my profession is architecture, but I devote a lot of my attention to art. I always have. I have 3 kids, 3 boys that are the ages of now, let's see, 14 and 7. So fun age. Fun age.
Holy crap.
Married.
Is it really a fun age? Or are you?
Actually, it is. It is.
Okay, just making sure.
I think I've been watching you on Twitter. You have little kids, right, Erica?
Yeah, I have 5, and 4 boys and a girl.
Wow.
Oh my God, awesome.
I come from a family of 5, so I shouldn't be surprised.
Where do you fall?
I'm from, I live in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah. I was born in Southern California.
Oh, cool.
Same.
Where are you in the birth order?
I'm second.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Very close second to my older brother, who's an INTJ. So you can sort of extrapolate the relationship there. We're kind of like Irish twins. A lot of competition between us. But anyway, so as far as my kids go, they're funner now than they were when they were little, I'd be honest.
That's
they're
cool.
fun to watch. They're nerdy and fun. So
My oldest is 10. I'm really looking forward to more older kid things to do with them.
10 is a really sweet age. They start to, and then they get crappy again after that.
That's great. So, it's good to know everyone and where we're all standing. My question for all of you guys is, what is your greatest gift? Who wants to start off?
Okay, I'll start.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, like, overall, my greatest gift is probably just being able to be a mirror for other people. That's the best way I could describe it. And I think, like, everybody, like, we're all mirrors for everybody we encounter. Like, even the smallest interactions with other people, I think, like, show us something about ourselves through that other person. But I think this is something that I, like, intentionally try to do. And a lot of, like, my time spent with other people is, like, one-on-one or, like, deep conversations. And I think that's usually what, like, ends up happening is, like, they walk away with, like, a greater, deeper sense of who they are or what they want or how they feel about something or something like that. And I think that's, like, consistently something that I provide. So,
That's beautiful.
yeah, thanks. Do you guys relate, or do you have other things that you would say? It's a hard ass question.
I don't relate to mirroring people's emotions, but I relate to being a mirror. I like the way you said that. Whereas I can oftentimes feel it inside and then kind of stay like who I won't start like sobbing with another person usually, but oftentimes like I will hear what they're having to say and process it internally and then be able to express it back to them in a way that can help them understand themselves a little better.
Yeah, that's a good explanation.
I really like the way you said that about being a mirror. So that's
Thanks.
great. I like that. That was very precise.
Thank you.
I have such a hard time wanting to ring my own bell, but one thing that
Do it, girl.
Relational empathy is something I'm very good at. Whereas like somebody can bring something to me and I can understand in a unique way how that might be for them and I have sometimes I get really excited about causes and things like that and I can stand alone. I don't need people I can stand alone with that cause. I don't need a lot of feedback from others. In fact, like negative feedback can actually make me stand firmer in who I am. So I really like that about myself. Positive feedback is wonderful and I love it, but I find that I don't need it or expect it. If it happens, I'm
yes,
thrilled.
that's awesome.
But it doesn't. I can stand with my own 2 feet and raise my head high and go, I'm really proud of the thing I did, the thing I said.
Yeah,
so that's something I like about myself.
I think that's awesome and so on point for INFPs is that like they do their own validation internally. So when they're doing something, they're already like, I'm on board. And if you support me, like I love you and thank you, but I'm not looking for it. Like the things I'm doing, I'm not looking for you or you to say something about what I'm doing. They're happy to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
I think that matches up with my experience as well. It's a little bit paradoxical because it's not like a overconfidence or a cockiness per se, because there's a lot of self-doubt, right? A lot of even so low self-esteem in a certain way of describing it. But at the end of the day, you have no choice but to choose your own way of doing it. And so as long as you have that ability and people allow it from you, you're cool to do it that way, right?
We beat ourselves up a lot internally. So when we put ourselves out there in the world, finally, when we get there, we're used to it.
I'm like curious about that though, of like the internal beating up. Like, do you guys feel like you struggle with self-confidence?
Yeah, but I don't. I had a conversation with MBTI Insights, Dan. We were just talking about this the other day. He describes himself. I don't think I'm revealing too much. As someone who has a very negative inner self voice. I don't have a negative inner self voice. Like I don't consciously or vocalize my negativity towards myself, but I do feel negative a lot. I do feel
Yeah.
crappy.
I'm very
Shreya, you're like, oh hell yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable. I'm too comfortable sometimes in negative spaces. I'm comfortable in negative spaces because I'm willing to go there for a long period of time. But so oftentimes there's a lot of self-doubt that happens. Not self-doubt, but I have to, like, I think what it comes down to is, and I don't, you'll have to tell me if you INFPs experience this as well, but I will take a very long time the FI is a tricky thing because I can either know exactly how I feel and stand really super firm in it, and I don't need any like feedback, and sometimes it can be impulsive and really like, I know what I'm doing, don't tell me how to do this, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Or the other paradoxical thing about it is it takes me forever to make that decision of whether or not it's important to me, and so those are the two problems I usually have.
I think I made a point in my chat with Joyce that if something is not important to me, I will completely jettison it from my court. Those ideas will never be heard.
Really?
Yeah, I'm very very discriminatory regarding that.
That seems very fourish to me. Yeah.
That is.
That's the difference
I
between
think-
a 9 and a 4,
I think-
I think.
Yes.
I think even as a child, I was a lot more directive. The directiveness is why I thought I was an INFJ in the first place, because of all the stereotypes I read on the internet and the faulty descriptions. I always seek to distance myself from the crowd. I always seek to distance myself from similarities. If somebody had something similar, I want something else.
That's very flourish. I love it.
Yeah.
I would all INFPs just knew what they wanted and like knew how they felt about something instantly, if it was important to them or not.
It's important.
But I guess that's not totally true then.
Yeah, I don't relate to that. I don't relate to always knowing what's important. I feel like I have to really work to figure that out. And I also don't relate to like just to like talk stereotypes, I guess. Like to the like fighting for a cause. Like I feel like I've never like been interested in like nonprofit work or anything, or I don't know.
What that cause is for you. It's not like you are a crusader. It's that what your personal cause is.
For me, it has to be very authentic. I don't just want to donate. I don't just want to be part of an organization. I want to be able to keep my individuality, but also make something very organic, something meaningful. Because I'll often engage in that sort of feeling tingliness, because I will often beat myself up. Why did I make you know me like that? What? I guess that's more of an SP thing.
Yeah. Do you mean like self-preservation?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I want to make sure, like I'm an SX Dom, so I have.
Me too.
Okay.
SP Dom.
Ah, we're so similar with our types.
I actually there's an interesting 9 versus, and if I'm talking too much, I'm sorry. So I apologize. But there's a 9 versus 4 dynamic that we have so much in common. But the one thing that I've seen as a difference from me with 4s is that I accidentally stand out, and I don't like it. It's actually really uncomfortable for me to stand out sometimes. So I want to merge with other people to understand myself a little better. Whereas I feel like 4s, they will feel uncomfortable settling in to that, but they still are very intuitive and very empathetic and understand just naturally how people feel. Whereas 9s tend to feel, some 9s, not all 9s, but some 9s can feel very alone in the world, and so they try to understand everybody else in the process and by merging with others.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Makes total sense.
For me, it's never merging with others. I actually can't relate to that.
About the merging?
The merging with others is not something I can relate to, because I've often had a very accurate idea of who I am, what my weaknesses are. I like to go right into the deep of the earth, see all the detritus, see all the hell in heaven, and then return back and merge with that, see which one I do. 4 to me is more like a saying of you're finding out you're the witch rather than the Wicca. You're not. It's more bare bones. It's less beautiful, actually.
That's also a very like a 4-wing 3 is way less likely to say what you just said than a 4-wing 5. Like
Gone.
Fives are really good in that melancholy space, I think.
yes, I think I mean 5s are very like depth oriented, just like 4s, and so I think like you really going and like I think there's 5s are able to, they really value like objectivity and like what you're talking about. You're not necessarily looking for what benefits you the most. You're looking for like the truth, and that's very 5. So I think combined with the 4, I don't know. That's what I see.
What I always realize about myself is though I don't like the attention at times, I can't help myself from putting myself out there. I always have to make my objective. I have to make that sense of intelligence known. I feel insignificant most of the time. There's a sense of comparison going a lot. And I often want to make everything I do very authentic.
Yeah.
Anything I type, who I follow, I often find it so frighteningly crippling.
You know, like I think there's something to that even outside of like Enneagram. I think that's a very like FI thing. And I think FI can map onto Enneagram 4 pretty easily. Like I noticed that like with different people in my life, like if I take a picture of something and it makes me think of someone or I share it with someone, I'm not going to also go send that picture to 3 other people. This picture is for you and it is special for you and no one else will see this. Like, and if I'm posting something on Instagram, let's say I make a post, that's also probably not a picture I've shared privately or directly with other people because it's for the masses or it's for just an expression, a general expression. It's very different. Like if I'm dealing with individuals, like it's focused and it's special and it's been thought out, kind of like how you're saying with the intention.
Sometimes I don't think those. Sometimes I don't think things through before I post things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think there can be that dabbled in there too. Do you find that's like a common thing? Does it feel good to just like randomly like boop?
Yeah, it depends. Actually, I can relate to that in the sense that I use social media in a very specific way. So Twitter is kind of like my stream of consciousness, where people will come and play with my ideas. But I know that on Facebook, people won't do that. People will come on to like rant about how they feel about things or like judge or like pass a judgment. And I don't find that, I don't really care, but I don't find it as fun. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to put something out on Facebook that matters a lot to me, they have to, I have to be really like, I don't really care what they're going to say about me, whatever. And so it's like, put it up there. And then Instagram, okay, I'm like a weird one. Instagram is my least favorite because people are so dang fake on it. It just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I don't like Instagram.
So Instagram is like my thing where I'm like, if I want to talk to the friends that I know that are only on Instagram, then I'll like post
then you'll do it.
I actually hated the stereotype of the Instagram INFP poet I saw on Quora. I was reading and no. I find it so basic. I find it so saccharine.
Saccharin's such a good word, dude. That's good.
Well done. Oh, RJ's back. I'm so glad.
Hey, RJ.
And charging cord.
So, welcome back.
Hope I didn't miss much.
I guess it's time to go to our next question because RJ's back. We all know about the saying, the INFJ door slam. So there's the INFP equivalent called the repulsion switch. So I'm wondering, have you guys experienced the INFP repulsion switch in any scenario before? And would you like to do
Plenty of times. Plenty of times.
All the time. It's
This is our favorite pastime.
No.
I haven't heard Mike. I want to hear from Mike. Do you experience the repulsion switch?
Infrequently. Like I have a whole lot of patience for a whole lot of people for a very long time. But I think the thing I have the hardest time with is willful ignorance. And when it goes on and on and on and on, I just run out of steam. And I try not to ever be ugly about it, but I get kind of done.
Yeah.
What is willful ignorance? Like, do you have a specific example, or not? Like, not tell us who did it, but like, how does it look to you?
Well, I'm trying not to be too specific. It often arises in the political sphere. People who like living in places of delusion and can't get out of it. So I have a certain amount of compassion for it. I just can't be around it. So I'm kind of attributing it to like drawing boundaries to help myself stay sane sometimes.
Yeah.
And I go a very, very long way before I say, okay, this is a boundary, and I'm going to just as kindly and compassionate as I can enforce my boundary. And that means I won't get to talk to you very much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is for me too. I mean, part of the repulsion switch, I guess, the reason why it's suddenly a switch is the ability to tolerate it for so long and have compassion and even identify with it on some level.
Yes.
But it's reaching a point of the water filled to the top and it just overflows.
Yeah.
I've experienced it as that same way of like, I feel like I have a lot of extreme amount of patience, and then suddenly it can be very frustrating when I've extended so much understanding and suddenly it's not given back. That can really that can be really upsetting to me. In fact, it's like one of the worst feelings I've ever had, where it's just like, you know, I've extended this and it's hard for me now to have to, it's almost like I love the people so hard and so much, but I need to set boundaries early, I've learned, because it's not fair to the other person to do that repulsion switch. Just like, you know what I mean? I don't always think it's very fair if I haven't like been clear from the beginning and been honest with myself about what I can and can't handle, and that's something I've had to do a lot of internal work on. What can I handle and what can't I? And accepting a certain amount of brokenness is important in that.
I was just wondering if like part of the repulsion switch for INFPs is the repulsion of ourselves, like of letting it get so out of control. Like, why have we not done something? Why have we not tried to draw boundaries sooner? Why haven't we like spoken out and stood up for ourselves more in the beginning? And then it just like piles up. I don't know.
I don't even think we know what we want at first until we've experienced it sometimes.
Joyce,
or at least for me.
Like what was described just now, like how is that different than the door slam, would you say, Joyce?
So
fairly similar in some way.
May I?
Sure, you can interject.
Sorry. Actually, no, I'm not. So I'll just go on. I actually don't relate to I have a lot of patience, so I'm actually snarling. I'm actually gritting my teeth these days when I see certain political opinions that I just find diametrically opposite to myself, actually. And the origin of that was, especially the origin of for this era, started back in 2008-9, the earlier days of YouTube, where I used to get in arguments all the time with people who are in the shipping wars, a weird microcosm of what I'm trying to describe. But I realized that most people do not change their opinions online. 80-90% of people will not. So I'm often very efficient at curating my own timeline and who's allowed, who's not allowed. I know what I want at this point.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
Yeah, damn.
But in regards to repulsion switch, I think I described earlier, it's realizing that the artwork is really I want to tear it to shreds. That's how it is. I remember the INFJ I fell out with, regretfully. She and I were both shocked that we were aiming daggers at each other at that point. Well, we were so nice to each other, and now I get to see that ugly side. And one of the things I said to her was, I actually like that you're so open with me about your feelings while you never have.
Well, what?
I like that she was very open about her instincts and feelings, because she was the type of individual to hold a wound for so many years, and only when I said a certain thing where she revealed her side and she was afraid of showing that, I was like, why are you? I like that.
Yeah.
I've experienced this with introverted judging types. I don't know if maybe somebody can sum that up for me. Is that they feel uncomfortable in that space sometimes. But Joyce, you know it, where it's where they're a lot of the times it's like if it's FE related, they're afraid of upsetting people, and if it's TE related. I know that if they don't say it the right way, they know they're going to get a bad reaction, so they'll hold back a lot. So because they can be a little too harsh and then hurt feelings, and they don't want to hurt their loved ones' feelings, so they'll hold back until they can say it the exact perfect way. At least this is my experience I've had with them. And Joyce, I mean, you're the INFJ here. I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, so I would explain my experience with like the door slam is when I do cut people out of my life, I am like completely certain there's not a smidge of doubt that I want that person back in my life. In the sense that I don't door slam people often, but if I have chosen to do it, I don't have any hope of recovering back the relationship because yeah, because it's kind of like I went through every consideration and now I've considered that it's not worth it. But it takes a lot.
I relate to that. I mean, that's how I feel too. Like I don't go back very rarely.
I imagine all the ways after I start distancing myself from a person. I imagine all the ways like that it could possibly fix itself.
Yeah.
And I'll stay in that headspace for a while. But this is only like severe intimate relationships, but that I've lost. That I've had to actually have people tell me like it's time to close that door, Erica. You need to start imagining the life without this person, or imagining this life without this experience that you're homesick for. So
homesick is such a good word.
Yes.
Yeah, that's, I mean, with, I don't know how like fluent we all are with MBTI terms and language, but like I feel like that's a very FISI loop thing to do.
Yeah. I was in an FISI loop regarding my INFJ ex-friend about a few weeks ago, and it turned it into its own art form. And the song I was listening to, and the first thing I thought was her, and how I could have made something different.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
How do you get out of that? How did you get out of that, Shreya?
I haven't really fully gotten out of it. I'm still going through the gamut of it at the moment, actually. But rather than getting out, it's just a sense of soberness, acceptance that we both hurt each other. We both found out a lot more about each other than we wanted to. We thought we were so similar, and yet we were very different. Very different in the way we process things. I also didn't have an embryonic understanding of MBTI at the time, so maybe I could have utilized that to explain my synapses,
you're doing it again. You're going
way
over
of thinking.
like maybe I could have made it better. I do that, that's how I do it too. I relate.
But I actually enjoyed the amount of stimulation I got from the pain that she gave me, the pain I gave her, and realizing that we weren't perfect. It was doomed from the beginning because of where things were. She was a broken individual, and I was at a different stage of my life.
Yeah.
Four to me is a lot about soberness, a sense of acceptance, transcendence.
Yeah, this is really drawing to me the differences between like 4 and 9. Like 4s are individualistic from head to toe, like from their speech choice, like they use the words like embryonic or
I was like, oh my god,
it's very unique.
So good.
Yeah,
but it's never for an act. I always feel like I have to know more, or else I'm not worth it. I always feel like I have to be able to experiment with things, experiment with new definitions, use as metaphors.
Yeah.
that is not just for show.
Yeah, I feel that too. I think I'm less inclined to do that in a group setting.
It often feels like I'm just so, like, something is just controlling something. I'm just so self-directed.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like I'm like my own neurosurgeon. I can go into the depths of my heart and find out where I went wrong. I like feeling that sense of vulnerability.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
I think what you were saying about like this being stimulated with the pain that you're going through is like such a freaking INFP thing. Like wanting that stimulation, even though it's from something bad, because so many people will feel those things and be like, bye. Like I'm burying that, or I don't want to unpack this. And I think INFPs like just want to dive in. Like they want to be there.
I see myself more as and I will, this
Sorry,
is going
guys.
a little bit too far, but I see myself more as a Morrissey done right or Dylan Klebold done right. And we all know what
Can you
type
hear
of
me?
individual he was.
Who did you compare? Like, do it right. Who was the comparison?
A controversial comparison, actually, and I'm quite sensitive about it, especially
Aw.
how they are, but more of a Morrissey done right or Dylan Klebold done right. We all know where they ended up. So that speaks for itself.
By the way, I love how you called Erica like the FI-SI loop as homesickness, because it's like revisiting the nostalgia of the SI with your emotions.
Yeah.
I can
I'll often realize that I could have done something better, and I sort of feel that sort of pain. But I know the INFJ will never feel that.
I'm sorry, RJ's making me laugh.
I kind of like the knowing that it could have been different and it wasn't. I like that things are, and I think also Shreya, you used the word organic earlier, and I really like that, and I think that's what I'm trying to describe here too, is like sometimes you have these really big pains or tragedies, and I want them like as they are, as they happened, is clearly like just what they were, and it wouldn't be the same if it wasn't. And I like to appreciate exactly how it happened and just be like, cool, so that's a chapter, like on to the next. I like that.
Cool.
I would also like to make a disclaimer that I don't necessarily think that any MBTI type in general is at fault for any falling out. I think it's always politically motivated. I think it's due to social conditioning. I think it's a difference of where somebody else is on stages of life, mental health, a lot of these factors that admittedly a lot of people in the community ignore. They're more willing to blame the type itself, which I find really off-putting.
I agree with you.
100%. And to celebrate RJ coming back, we will start with another question.
Yay! RJ, you're like always our little transition. Okay, and here we go. Well,
I was so looking forward to getting to know RJ better, but he's just doing that. Popping in and out.
Oh, he's back. One moment.
It's
there we go.
Joyce?
Yeah. Yeah?
Have you seen Yu Yu Hakusho by any chance?
No, I haven't. So I guess this brings us to our next question. So I'm wondering, how many of you are HSP? So that means highly sensitive person. And it turns out that studies say that introverts are more likely to be HSPs, but even extroverts can be. But I'm just wondering, in general, do you consider yourself an HSP?
Erica, yes. I quickly just want to say something before we really dive into like our personal experience of like what I'm curious how we're each interpreting that. And I don't know, maybe there's literally like an objective definition, but I don't know if I relate to like what how people have talked about it. Like, so I'm just wondering, like, Joyce, do you have like an objective description in front of you? Or I'm wondering if there's something like that.
So
I don't know.
I'm not that skilled in what an HSP is, but I'd say that the word sensitive kind of gives it away. Like, do you feel like you're more sensitive than the average person to stimulus, to comments, to anything?
It can be as simple as like the weather affects you more than a normal person. It can be as complex as you have like the terms like whether or not you buy into the empath word, because a lot of people are skeptical about what that means. But the typical empath things where it's like when somebody is experiencing something, you feel that inside.
Okay. All right.
And like for one of the HSP thing that I have is like smells. I can't handle smells. Like I'm very sensitive to smells in general, and will either get like seriously bad headaches, or I'll like gag and throw up randomly, even if it's just a smell. Yeah, things like that. I can't handle tight fitting clothes, so like I look like a slob half the time because it makes me feel very super uncomfortable. And one of the what was the other one I was going to say just now? Loud noises can cause me serious anxiety, and this is one. This is kind of an introvert quality, but it's like introvert like on steroids almost, where it's like if I have too fast of a lifestyle, I get migraines all the time. So so things like that, where I learned that as a young kid, I could have bursts of those things and then big times away, so I had to detox from them basically. And now as an adult, I basically set my life around not having those experiences all the time, now that I have control over my life and stuff. So
very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, that is. I think I would say I relate to being a highly sensitive person. I guess I would say I do, but I don't feel like like it's something that is a negative experience for me. I guess that's what like I find that like I'm also really sensitive to smells, but like I love smelling things. So to me, it's not like like everything does seem exaggerated, and I sometimes like I love it. Sometimes it can be annoying. Usually it's just like the data that's coming in and I don't pay it much mind.
Yeah,
but
I would say really quick that I mentioned this all in a very negative way, but what I would say is I've looked at it now as in like now that I'm able to like recognize when it bothers me and use them for very good things. So like it's actually it's like our greatest weaknesses are our greatest strengths are our greatest weaknesses sometimes. So like a super productive person like my ISTJ husband, it can be a weakness of his. Yeah, like to like be too on the go that he's not like stopping to consider how everybody is doing, feeling, all that stuff. Like sometimes that can be a difficulty for him, but it doesn't make so that's a weakness that he has to be aware of. For me, being whatever the highly sensitive person label is I'm very sensitive, but I've learned to use it like if I tailor my life to be aware of the things that cause me trouble, I can use it for good in other ways. So I dawdle a lot, but some of my best thinking gets done when I dawdle. Like,
yeah, so there's value there.
I can write a lot, and I can talk to people and understand them help understand them. So it's you make time for that other people maybe don't because of it.
Right. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Oh yeah, and like the smell thing. The smells. I have like positive smells, like because it'll put me to sleep, or it'll make it or trigger or trigger creative expression. Like it's really weird sometimes where it's like a simple smell will suddenly like set my brain on fire. So it's a positive way. So
it's always like I've always welcome back.
Welcome back,
you're very muffled.
Yeah.
Oh no. Do you guys hear him?
Are you underwater?
It's interesting because like even I guess identifying as an HSP, like I have a lot going on. Like I don't relate to having a lot of downtime or quiet moments. I'm constantly.
Well, I have 5 kids, so.
That's true. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So I'm sure I would have a little bit more of a more kinesthetic life or whatever if I didn't have 5 kids. That makes me have to slow down quite a bit.
Yeah. I can't relate to that.
Can't imagine having that much kids for myself personally.
Do you want kids?
I haven't discounted it at all. It's just I need the right mind space and time for it.
I wonder if it's like very for or just maybe FI to listen to something and wonder if you have it. So it's like Erica mentioned 5 kids, and then Shreya automatically thought about her relationship with 5 kids.
I think it's more FI.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I think that's a really, I think it's an FI thing as well.
It's an FI
Yeah.
thing, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
To
I wanna
immediately
know-
bounce. I think that's like
Yeah.
a difference, how you know you, like, because I've personally wondered if I was an ENFP. I've had a lot of people be like, you're not an INFP.
Yes.
But I do
Same.
bounce. Yeah, girl, I can tell. Like, people, or when I hear things and I'm taking in information or experiencing things, I definitely, my default more than any is to bounce it internally. Like, I can also have a reaction of like, brrr, but generally I'm pinging internally.
That was the
first.
Enneagram.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's like the differentiator between like what makes something like FI or TI or FE or NTE.
I would say.
Yeah, because I had an interview with Shannon yesterday from Objective Personality, the ENTJ, and she told me about how she doesn't know her own opinion about things, but she knows what other people would think about it. But so if you asked her like, yeah, so I asked her like what words she thinks that she is like, and she's like, I don't know, but I know what Dave would think I was automatically, and that's something I would be to know too as an INFJ. I know what someone else would see me as, but I don't know how I see myself as.
Oh, can I say something really quick because that resonates?
Me too.
There was this
Me too. I think it's a 9 thing.
Okay, this is something really crazy.
No, not regarding that.
No, but this is I think an FI problem too, where it's like I was taking one of those stupid Facebook like personality quizzes, like which Apple are you, or something and I was just like wasting time and dawdling, and then I took one of them, and one of them was like, how would your friends describe you? And I was stuck. I was legit stuck. And I took a screenshot of the question and asked one of my best friends, how would you describe me? Because I was like, I don't know how I come across to you sometimes. Like, I just know. But like if they had asked me, what do you see yourself as? I would have been able to answer that really easily. So it was like, it was the specific phrasing, and that just like went off in my head, and I didn't even think about that at the time. But I legit was like, it's a stupid quiz, but it's making me think, how do you see me?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah.
In regards to quizzes, I have a general question, actually, one that doesn't get talked about, but when do you feel is appropriate age for people to be tested on the MBTI? Because I don't feel that testing as a child is more of an inaccurate indicator, in my opinion.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think the tests can be inaccurate in general, just if somebody doesn't have the self-awareness.
Especially because another thing that also does not get discussed in the community is that the development of the functions is very varied depending on what society you grew up in. There's a lot of mental health factors, there's societal factors, there's economic factors. So I was a lot more any like when I was younger. I wouldn't sit still. I was a lot more demanding. So, and I played music a lot. So I feel like I developed my NE and TE more.
Yeah, I relate to that.
Hillary, what were you gonna say?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
One of the reasons I perk up a lot is because I tend to forget the questions, so I have to put it out there.
Yes. Okay, wait, but I did just remember.
Great.
I was gonna say that I feel I actually don't even know how to answer this, like who knows you, like they know you versus you know you. I feel both ways. I've definitely had other people be like, oh, you're like this, or like, oh, it's because you're this way. And I'm like, what? How do you see this? Like, you're actually telling me things, you observe things about me, and they have like qualities.
That makes me so anxious.
I'm sorry, yeah. But like definitely other times, like I feel more aware of how people perceive me. And mostly I perceive that depending on your relationship with me, you're perceiving something different. And I want to know the commonalities.
That's interesting. That's why I said like 4 plays into it too. Like I do think it's an FI thing to know like your relationship with a certain like idea, like 5 kids, or like if you want to be this or something. But specifically it compounds with the 4. So if you have a 4 and you're a FI, you are doubling down on knowing your own opinion on something. But if you're a 9 with an FI, you're more
It
likely
feels
to be in the
conflicting.
conflicting area.
Yeah, it took me a long
I would
time to
say-
figure out I was INFP because of that.
And I would say that like with the 5 kids thing, like you know, and that FI, I wanted to actually comment on that because for me, having 5 kids was my personal choice that I felt very strongly about. So whether or not I can do it or not is actually less important than the fact that I want to do it, and that it's really super important to me. And so it's like I have that inside me. And it's so important to me that it's no longer like whether I can or can't do it anymore. It's that I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it as best as I can. So that's kind of like that FI value thing where it's like people, whatever it is that you value, that what we call crusades or whatever, it's really what you value. My cat is in the room whining at me. So
I hear.
yeah, what's wrong? Okay, whatever. Yeah, so for me, and I think every INFP will have that very specific cause that they can stand ground about. So for me, having the 5 kids, and I started having kids really young, but it was my personal thing. It was very important to me. So no matter what people were saying about like you're too young to do this, whatever, it did not matter to me. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew what my value was, and I did it. And I fought really hard to make it happen and do with as great of a job as I did do with it. So that's one of those things I wanted to say with the FI. I can understand an INFP wanting to be like, that's not for me. And I'd be like, yeah, good. You know?
Yeah.
So,
right. It's just the strength of the desire is very FI, I think, even if we all have different desires, but the thing that's the same across the board is that they're strong in all of us. It doesn't matter that they're different.
I often wonder whether I'm a 4 with an INFx, actually.
Ooh.
It could be like there's the tri-type with the Enneagram.
Yeah.
I'm 947.
Me too.
So we're just kindreds.
What? Except I think I'm 974, but I mean, still.
Yeah. It's really interesting how like INFPs, the impulse with conversation is to explore themselves more. So like she is like maybe an INFx, and I'm like, this is an exploration chat. So P.
I guess so.
Yeah. So Mike, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, clearly, as you can see, I seem to need a lot of space to speak into because I'm way more comfortable writing.
Yeah.
Because it's like my internal processes on the fly don't go very quickly. Well, a difference. Well, I don't know if it's not a difference. It's just another aspect. You know how over the course of a lifetime you get to junctures where you have an opportunity to do extra shadow work.
Yes.
I'm so thick in the shadow work of one's further along life that sometimes I'm not sure how to speak it out because I'm so keenly aware of my broken places right now, and that's very valuable.
Yeah.
But it leaves me not quite knowing how to speak into a situation. Plus, I just, in a very 9-ish way, I just love hearing about all y'all's experiences. So it's like I'm just listening, being happy.
Mike, okay,
Yeah,
but I'm so curious
really
about like. Sorry, Erica.
No, I was just gonna say real quick because he's my I love talking about my husband. I do that all the time. My husband's a 1-wing 9, and he's very much like that, a lot like that, where he likes to just sit and listen and consider everyone, you know, and I understand that from his perspective of just like, I don't need to insert myself. If I am going to insert myself, I need a lot of space for people to not like interrupt or there be, you know what I mean? It's more just like, and he prefers writing too. So I just wanted to say that's very interesting. I think the 1-wing often wants to make sure that they're saying it the right way. Whatever it is that they're saying. But go on, Hillary, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Oh wait, let's just take a moment and see if we can hear RJ because he just sent a little text.
I was gonna ask RJ.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, good.
Okay, I just saw that pop up. Yay, I'm glad you used the chat.
I realized the little mic thing was just barely not in all the way, and that's why I was muffled.
Oh, okay.
Awesome, great. We got
Okay.
it solved. So
See, perseverance. This is,
perseverance.
Yes, outside perseverance.
give up on stuff like that.
Yes.
So RJ, what are your thoughts on this whole conversation?
On the whole, like, just all of it.
Well, what about shadow work? Kind of like what Mike was
Oh,
saying. Like,
yeah.
I'm kind of curious because now I'm thinking about like clearly we've all had our own like life paths. What have been like key moments for you guys in like really having to face something and do some intense shadow work? And did it feel like something that was your choice, or did it feel like, oh crap, now I'm thrown into here and I really need to adapt and face this specific demon?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I mean, you
Very
can tell by
question.
the gray in my hair. I'm one of the older ones in this group.
I
So
don't want to
I'm-
ask
I'm-
age, but I'm so curious, you guys. I'm going to ask. If you want to share, please tell your ages.
Sure.
I'm 32.
26.
29.
44.
I just had a decade birthday well along the timeline.
Okay.
40. Huh?
That's fair. You don't have to answer. I was just
Oh,
curious.
I don't mind. I don't mind telling you. You just might go, "Why are you here?"
Oh,
I just turned 60.
Cool.
No,
Happy birthday.
everyone's
Well, thank you.
allowed.
You're
I-
welcome.
I've
Yeah, I
noticed
thought it-
online MBTI is a young person's game, so I assumed I would be the elder statesman of this group. So
I like this thing. It sounds so nine of me. I'm just kidding. I'm just scared. I love that we're all different.
Yeah, no,
biased in different
I think
ways.
that's
Yeah.
excellent too. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. But the question was, shadow work. So 44, 40 was not too long ago. It's a big, some of you that are approaching 40 are probably feel it looming. If you were like me, I felt it looming on my 30th birthday,
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh,
shit.
dude.
Oh, sorry.
I love aging. I can't wait to keep getting older.
It took me to, I had to cross the threshold before I felt comfortable with it, honestly. But you asked, was it a voluntary thing? I think in many, many ways, no, it was not voluntary whatsoever. I've been in talk therapy for about 2 years. I did like an online therapy for like a year before that. That was mixed results. So I've been in like 3 years of therapy, and I would say that's been a big, shadow work exercise, I would say, right? But it started in my mid 30s. The impetus to really dig in, that I was sort of forced into it, came, I think, in my mid 30s. And it was when, kids are little. I got 3 little kids by that point. Career was just heating up, and not
I
slowing
feel like
down.
I'm staring into my future right now. Okay, go on.
Yeah. Well, look at the gray.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
And and marriage, I'm still married. I'm married to the first person I've ever married. She's an INFJ, by the way.
This is so common.
Yeah, it is.
I never understood why. I never
She's a
understood
real one
why.
too.
Yeah.
I've got 20 years or almost going on 20 years of data, and yeah, she's INFJ. But there's some challenges there too. And so mid 30s, life is getting crazy. Marriage is not getting any easier, and I was really frustrated with my career. Architecture is a TE, the practice
Mhm.
of architecture, maybe not architecture itself, but the practice is a TE intense job. And I tried my best, but the artist and designer in me was really, really struggling to feel satisfied. And I just launched into, almost as like my own personal self therapy. I just started writing and illustrating my own little stories, And it was only several years later that I thought, oh wait, this is shadow stuff. Like this is about me. This isn't about these. Like that's how stupid I didn't know that I was writing about myself. I really thought I was just coming up with stories.
Can I ask a
that led
question?
into my therapy, which has been a lot of dream work, a lot of analysis and that kind of stuff. So long story.
I was wondering, when you guys say shadow work, can you be more specific? Like, I'm just trying to understand. Do you mean like the functions we don't have in our normal stack? Is that what?
Oh yeah, I guess I purposely left it open-ended just to kind of see like big picture what people considered.
I think shadow work. I think shadows are colored by those functions in a particular way, but I think of more in the Jungian, sense, which is
okay. Just wanted to clarify
your complexes. Like everything unconscious essentially.
Right. Yeah. I've got that. I just wanted to clarify so I knew.
And I don't think it's stupid like to like not know that you were writing about yourself. I mean, that's very akin to like children playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know, like, I was familiar with Jung. I always liked Jung. I thought I'd study psychology in my college. It was like my second choice career-wise. And so I always had an interest in it, and I always read Jung, here and there, not a lot. But it wasn't until my end of my 30s that I really dug in deep, and that kind of led me into MBTI and all that kind of stuff. But I was interested. Jung was born. He's 100 years different. He was born. I'm 100 years old. My birthday. He was born in 1875, I believe.
Okay.
And so, I was reading about his life, and I saw he had that split up with Freud, and he went into like the shadows for like 10 years, and then reemerged. But if you've ever heard about the Red Book, that's essentially his active imaginations, which were essentially his deep dive into his own shadows. And I was looking at the dates, like he started doing that like right towards the end of his 30s, mid 30s. And I thought, and that's when that's when I started working on these stories, and I started reading this stuff, and I thought, that's when I started to see the connection more, and it kind of blew my mind, really, what was in my head that I didn't know was there.
Yeah, I love that. I've started in my later years. I started to journal a lot more. I used to journal a lot as a kid, but I started to journal in stories more because I could. And the other, I don't know if this is shadow work or not. I'm just gonna say it because this is what's on my mind. I will objectively talk to feelings. Like I'll personify my feelings and I'll talk to them and give them a voice. And so I no longer like, this is me. I'm not sad. Sad has a voice. So sometimes it's almost poetic the way I talk to my feelings. Like,
well, I guess that's why I thought of the Red Book. I got off track, but that's what Jung would call active imagination, right?
Okay.
The Red Book is.
That's what I was recognizing in what you were saying, and I just wanted to like apply it to what I experienced. So maybe we. I mean,
that's like the textbook definition of what active imagination is, right? You take a feeling, and you personify it, and you.
I relate to that.
You disconnect from it. It's the transcendent function. It's by personifying it, by symbolizing it. You can sort of combine functions into one. The archetypes sort of become multiple functions that you can look at.
Yes.
For fours especially, symbol is the food of inner life.
Definitely, yeah.
I've done it where it's like let's say jealousy, which I don't feel like I experience jealousy that much, thankfully, but I just use that as an example. Like, what is jealousy telling me today? Hello, jealousy. Welcome into my life. And
for me, it's been confusion a lot. Like confusion is. I am not confused. I am with confusion. Confusion is sort of right sitting next to me, and I talk to confusion. Or I talk to
intimidation is a big one. Hello, intimidation. Why do you want to talk to me right now? What are you bringing? Am I saying
anxiety, worry? The worriers. I have a little sketchbook just the other day that I did. Got it over here. I just saw this picture of a guy sitting and this sort of crowd of people around him, and I thought, the idea of the worriers were sort of like kind of crowding around him, and then I thought, oh yeah, I am worried about something, aren't I? And and I started to talk to the worriers, which are
I
essentially
love that.
shadows.
I love
Yeah,
that so much.
I relate to that. I relate to that.
I love that so much. I wanted to ask you guys, just because this feels like this is similar work. Do you guys ever find yourself engrossed in like fiction and finding yourself through it? Because I feel that way, or like finding not yourself, but like maybe even the sense of you can explore what's going on inside, and it can like come out, and you can like express it better, maybe, or you can like if somebody's going through a struggle in fiction, you can like relate that to your life and go, oh, that's a similar, and then create a different ending in your mind of something you're struggling with. Because that's something I work through on my own in my journal sometimes, where I'm like, I related to this person's struggle in this book, and then I'm like, this is how it went in my life, and I'd like to write a different ending so I can have my own closure.
That's the problem I have with journaling a little bit. Like I like, it's not to badmouth journaling. I journal myself. Yeah, everyone journals, and it's often a therapy thing that's recommended. But journaling can be problematic too, because it's all consciousness. It's all what your ego can grasp in the moment, and it tends to churn around. Whereas telling stories or writing stories or listening to stories, it pulls up the unconscious. It pulls up the things your consciousness can't get to. And so I like you were saying, I would rather than journal, I would rather write a story, any story whatsoever.
Yeah.
Whatever story I write, whatever's in the back of my mind is going to kind of weave itself right into and then I can see what's going on. But journaling, I tend to like get anxious and I buckle down and turn over and over.
Yeah.
That's
I
what I mean
go
about
through
the
that.
journaling of like the stories that I'm experiencing or whatever's going on in my brain, and talk about it like in that way. Yeah.
With me, in regards to jealousy, I will accept that I could be jealous. I will try to actually personify that in a sort of character. I would actually know what I'm feeling, and I would try to personify that in character stories. It's never finding myself through a story. I always have an acutely aware of certain things.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like an oddball because I don't really go out of my way to read fiction, and I don't really relate to like finding myself through fiction. I think I probably, yeah, I think like I used to like journal a lot more as a kid, just like you said, Erica.
Yeah.
Like I would also write fiction stories as a kid, like in my free time, like in school, for example, like I would just write story after story, and they were all about fake stuff, things that weren't real in my life, but scenarios that I wanted.
Yeah. That too.
Yeah. But as like an adult, I
just dreamed them constantly.
Yeah, dream.
I was a big daydreamer.
Daydreamed them.
Yeah, daydreaming was as a kid, it was a problem for me, but I love it now. I actually
a problem. Yeah, okay. Get that.
Yeah.
I'd say Hillary, you said you're how old, like 20, late 20s?
Yeah, I turned 30 in July.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Congratulations. I could say that I've gone through large chunks of my life where fiction reading was not, other things just sort of like took the place of, I would go through patches where I would read fiction constantly, and then I go through large patches where I wouldn't, so now I could look back and say, when I was 28, 29, 30, I wasn't reading a lot of fiction, but it wasn't for 5 more years that suddenly reading fiction became like a necessity. Suddenly.
Right. Like I've definitely in the last couple years, I did feel a very strong need to read fiction, and not any fiction, but fiction. Like I wanted something that I couldn't put down. I wanted to completely immerse myself.
Yes.
And I read one book and then I was done. Like I was satisfied. I got it. And I was like, okay, back to nonfiction. But honestly, like I just haven't read a lot as an adult. I used to read constantly as a kid and was like very like a very good reader. Like it was like a best subject of mine in elementary school and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel more of a need to create and to share as an adult for some reason. Like reading and quiet activities just have been lower on the priority list, I guess. Like I value them highly, and I hope that I can get back into reading again, but it's just, it'll come later.
Yeah. And it's
I
all
think.
different, lifestyle that might contribute to that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all such individualists. We do it all.
Yeah, like this is what I'm up to, whatever. The next, it's all very, yeah, just like you said, RJ, of like seasons, right? We all just
Yes.
go through them all, and they're great.
I think the seasons that I'm in that's different than my 20s, that I was just thinking about this the other day, is it's knowing who I am very strongly now, and then being able to assert myself into the world and make choices that I feel that will support my future for good. Like in the 20s, I was a little bit more scattered about that and more exploratory, and I'm starting to feel a little more grounded in those right now, because I've had so many life experiences that have been tragic or sad, or shook my life up so much that and I've seen how they've resolved or haven't resolved, which is a big one to accept, and just having to live in them for a while. So it's like, okay, so that was a really crappy situation for me. I've moved on from it. I've grieved it. Now, how do I want to move forward in my life now? And what's important? What's important to me? What do I really want? What do I have the energy for? And how can I make it happen? And I'm finally really grounded in that. And I'm still kind of coming up with ways of making it reality for good, which is
that's
really
so empowering.
Yeah.
That's so great.
It's a good space. I definitely like the 30s more than I liked my 20s so far.
Yeah,
if I'm being real, it's just my 20s.
I mean, it was a mixed bag.
There was a lot to love about my 20s, and it was a great time in my life. But it's this feeling, and when I turned 30, even though it's not, it feels like a bigger number than it is. When I turned 30, it felt like I was leaving childhood behind in some way. I don't know. But then when I actually entered my 30s, I'm like, no, I'm actually able to have the confidence to go after the things that I really truly care about and really enjoy them, that I wasn't feeling confident about in my 20s. So it's been a feeling in that way.
Okay.
I feel how you do about your 20s, the way I feel now about my formative years, actually, because I was a lot more sheltered, and I still wasn't out of my parents' influence of religion and etc. And now I'm a lot more willing to go out and put myself out there, and these are the makeup years for my formative years that I missed out. Actually, I feel a lot more confident nowadays.
That's awesome.
There's this meme I made with another INFP that it's like the late 20s, early 30s, beyond, for like once you actually leave the 20s behind, or as you're moving through them, it's like, is this youth? Like you're actually you're an old soul, and now you're letting that child's heart come out and assert itself a little bit more. So
yeah, wow. I'm thinking right now. That's so true. I'm thinking about right now how like Shreya's FI is so prominent. So it's very easy to see, like, in the sense that when you're saying something about your life, Erica, about being 20, and then Shreya related it back to when she was 20, and then you see that like FI is always bringing it back to its relationship with being that at that time. So it was like when I was 20, I was feeling that, and so I relate. But the thing is, like with the type 4, it just puts the FI on steroids. So it's like even more noticeable, because I'm like Shreya is undeniably FI. Like it's so like distinct that like, but like there are different flavors of FI too. It doesn't have to be that like ultra distinct one, but there's like this flavor profile of FI that's here, and it's amazing.
I love that.
Yeah, so that brings me to my next question. What is like your biggest life challenge, or a challenge you've went through, and how did you overcome it? And what advice do you have for INFPs who might go through something like that?
Okay, I have one. Can I start?
Yeah.
Okay, we've briefly talked about this, but it kind of goes back to the FI-SI loop. Like I I was married. I honestly feel like I'm like lifetime 2.0 right now. That's what it feels like. And as also, oh my God. As someone who's a 9 who like attaches to other people.
And you're an SX Dom, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of like intimacy happening.
Extreme relational intimacy, yes.
Yeah, and it was like very difficult to, and also like I married my high school sweetheart, my middle school sweetheart. Like I'd known this person for so long and like grown up with them, and going from that to being on my own as an adult, where a lot of my experiences growing up were, you know, binded to this other person. And so it was even like simple things of like, how do I make a decision? What do I do in my spare time? What are my hobbies? All that. It was so overwhelming, and it was hard to not get stuck in a loop of, okay, well, maybe we'll get back together someday. Or like, you know, what do I need to do to fix this? And it's very just, I think other INFPs can struggle with that. And it's very freeing to be like, you have so many yous, you have so many lifetimes, you have so many things you can experience, and that will hit you for the better. And like, why don't you just continue, just write the next chapter, just start it anywhere. I think that's like a very inspiring thought for INFPs, is like, this version of you can love it and it can be part of you forever, but there are these other versions that you haven't explored yet that can bring you so much.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a sweet message.
Thanks.
It warms.
I do think that is
Well, that was a bad heart.
a
How do you do a heart? I can't do the mirror thing. This is challenging.
Yeah, the mirror thing is like, and we're all like SE blind, right? So it's like,
I know, we're like, what's a heart?
Oh,
so true.
oh
Draw it
yeah.
like this. There.
I about
what's
SE blind.
happening?
Or there's the Korean heart.
I did not even recognize my own soles, and my feet and hands are actually all pale until everybody else is pale until my formative years.
Ah, makes sense.
Relatable.
I can go next if you want.
Yeah, we should go in order.
So something, I can't get specific, but I went through a period that I lost a whole. I went through a period where I had to completely uproot everything that I grew up in, and that was extremely. It was what I put my hopes and dreams on, and my family, what I wanted, and it had been something that I loved since I was a small child. And when I was a small child, I envisioned my life being in this area, in this place, and it ended in a very painful and sour way. And everything was affected. My lifestyle, my family, my kids, my relationships, like all my close relationships were changed. And then lost friends that I was like, the SX Dom's relational intimacy is very, very strong. And so in order to you have to temper that sometimes and learn the lessons. And also a job I really loved. Like that was like my whole.
A job, you said? A
job I loved a lot. And there was a betrayal aspect in it too. So getting fired. Mm-hmm. So going through that set me into some severe mental health problems. And then my husband almost died. So he got sepsis out of nowhere 9 months after all this happened. So basically there was a time in my life where everything was shaken. Everything that I thought I could trust was suddenly on weird footing, and I survived it because I'm quite adaptable, but it was like living in a twilight zone. And even though I had done all the right things to fix it, like getting a healthier lifestyle, getting better friends, it was really, it's still very hard. You can hear the emotion in my voice to
Yeah.
let go of that feeling of that's never going to be back there again. All those hopes and dreams that I had since I was a little girl were gone. You know, those relationships are over. Those things that I really trusted in, all that, you know, and so there's a lot of, that was a very painful thing, and it took a lot of therapy. I actually did EMDR therapy to like retrain your brain, because one of the things I was realizing is the trauma of it. Whenever I would think or replay the memories, I was in like first person mode, like I was viewing it, and I could like re-experience it over and over again. So I did EMDR therapy, and I was starting to look at the memories objectively, so I could look at them and like I was now in like a bird's eye view of the memory instead of like re-experiencing it. So that's really something I recommend, EMDR therapy, because it was life-changing to see my memory, to realize that I could see my memories in a different way. So it was like, oh, and I have control over whether or not I'm in them or out of them. I can move that little girl inside that's scared or whatever, you know. And and to accept, like, and this actually happened just a couple of weeks ago, because I still process things over and over and over and over again. And I had somebody tell me that you have to imagine slamming this door, that you can't let your thoughts go to this place anymore, because you keep wanting to fix it. You keep wanting to fix it. Like, if only I had not done this, or if only I hadn't pushed this person this way, or if only I had done the job better, I wouldn't have gotten fired, which is so not true. And I couldn't even like look at the positive memories without them being extremely painful and setting me off into these loops. So I've been, in the last few months, finally getting to the point where it's like, I can look at the positive memories and feel so good about the things I accomplished, and bring them to the future with me, because I'm reconciling like my present with my past with my present, without it carrying all the baggage of like what I've lost and what I did wrong and all the things that hurt. And I can feel really good about the choices I'm making right now, and keep that eye on what I want, as opposed to what I didn't do right, or what did go wrong. And that's been extremely helpful for me. And sometimes facing really, really harsh truths, and just crying about, letting yourself cry over it. Just like, that person didn't really love me the way I thought they did. That's okay. That's okay. I can live with that. Face it though. Don't stay in my head about it.
Yeah, facing it is really important.
Face it and live in it for a while, and feel really, really, really crappy about it for a while. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to feel really crappy about something for a while. And then just say, okay, I felt like, I'll give myself sometimes a day when things happen, when I'm triggered again, and go, I'm going to feel really crappy today about it. This is something I'm going to really let myself sit in. And then I set my boundary with my own brain, because it's not just boundaries with people, it's boundaries with myself. Boundary with my own brain. I'm going to train my thoughts like I train my toddler. Don't go over here. Don't open these doors. It's not a safe place for you. Like, if my child is about to run off and jump in a pool, I'm going to say, no, not that way, honey. So I talk to myself that way. We're not gonna go open this door, Erica, because this is not you know how this goes. This isn't gonna help you. So that would be some my own personal experiences. So
that's awesome.
That's really beautiful.
Well, good.
Does anyone else want to share next?
I don't know. I'll say something. I think I understood that, you know, part of, Erica, your struggle was maybe parting ways with the religious group that you were part of. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it was there. But that, I would say I relate to that a lot. Actually, that's part of my story as well. You know, raised quite religious, and liked it. You know, I have 5 kids.
I like religion, by the way.
Me too. Yeah. And I'm fine if people don't like it too. But I grew up in one, you know, very distinct and very big part of my family culture. I evolved, but then on top of that, I of all the 5 siblings, I was just the church kid. You know, I don't know what it was. You know, like, all my siblings, they could take it or leave it more. I mean, they were in it, out of it. But I was the one that actually liked it, you know, for some weird reason. And my mom, I was raised, she's an ISFP, so a really FI heavy atmosphere for religious upbringing. And my grandparents, her parents were a big part of my upbringing too. And my grandfather was an ISFP, and my grandmother was a ESFP. So they were the tradition comes through them. So it was a big part of our identity. And yeah, I think it was a similar thing. I won't go too many details, but you get to a point where you have to realize, you start to see that they're being part of a collective is a struggle, and the collective protects itself more than protects the individuals. And that's a hard thing to face, because it weaves into your whole. If you're FI and you've been reared all your life on a collective, in a very heavy collective society, it causes some really strong rifts inside. And so, yeah, part of my struggle was getting over that. I've been doing that for 15 years now. I mean, in just very slow steps.
Being able to trust your own FI when you come from a collective that mattered a lot to you is extremely hard emotional work.
Oh, the concept of like not trusting your FI is interesting.
Yeah, or finding a place for it, your FI. Which until you see it, I didn't. I think that's why I really enjoyed getting to know MBTI and Jungian stuff. I felt it, but I didn't know how to identify where the rift was happening. And once I could sort of visualize just on that functional level, it was just very helpful, and so it just helped to do some of the work. But so that was a big thing that I had to overcome, was trusting myself to rewire. That's what therapy has been about for a long time. But then also, my wife was raised in the same, and we were both together.
My husband too.
And that's the world we were in when we came together. And now what? But though fortunately, she's not too different. She doesn't see the world too differently than I do. So that's been a help.
Yeah.
What do you do about your kids? All that kind of stuff, because I have to go back. I want to rely on my memory. I want to rely on my history in terms of religious tradition. And now I look at my kids and I don't know what the hell what to tell them. I mean, I do, but I still haven't sorted it out. It's very deep stuff. And so that's a big struggle that I've been overcoming, but haven't totally overcome.
Wow.
I love how introspective we all are.
Yeah. I have one more just quick thing, like regarding functions, that I think is like a really useful key for INFPs. And like, I kind of think this for any type. I think the 7th function is like honestly a key to like leveling up. So for like INFPs, that would be SE, extroverted sensing. And I find honestly, well, I'm mentioning it too, because like a few of us have specifically said it, Shreya. Yeah. And I think like I realized in the last couple of years that I like really went out of my way to engage in it. And I seriously feel like it has really helped me flourish and get in touch with like, so like if we're talking about MBTI terms, like the ENFJ within, if that makes any sense. Like for some reason, I think engaging SE for INFPs, regardless of like where you are in life or what your personal like struggles are, I think it helps you really get in touch with your voice and the present moment. And also just like understanding that you can take up space in the world and you probably should.
Yes.
It's interesting. From the functional standpoint, sorry, Mike, I'll let you go. You haven't been speaking. You were going to say something.
Well, I can just affirm Hillary there. There's a James Joyce quote. I forget which story it is, but something like
Joyce.
Mr. Duffy lived just a short distance out of his body.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And I spent almost my whole life like that. But so I'm touching on what Hillary said about SE. And that is in the recent 4 years, I've actually discovered that I actually can be an athlete. I never ever knew that before.
Like in what way? Like running or?
Well, I'll tell you specifically. Um, See, one thing, everything ties together. So it's like I've been sitting here. I don't know how to tell a story.
Right. Yeah.
But I can focus on this one.
Yeah.
It's actually an INFJ friend who came into my life almost 9 years ago, and her perspective on things helped prepare me for hearing Brene Brown. The first time I heard Brene say, you cannot numb your roughly this. You cannot numb out your pain without also numbing out your joy. And I realized I had spent 2 decades numbed out. And I could go into that, but I won't go into that now because I'm trying to stay focused. But this INFJ friend provided me the impetus to realize I don't want to numb out the joy anymore, because this matters too much to me. I'll do whatever it takes to come back to wholeness and feeling. So one of her things is she discovered that she was a phenomenal beast of an athlete, and I always saw myself as completely and utterly clumsy, with terrible traumatic memories of junior high and high school physical education.
Yeah.
But when she and her family had moved away, it just came upon me that I got to visit them, and she and her husband had started a running program, and I was so impressed at their discipline, and it just came into my head when I got back home. So I just asked, if I started a Couch to 5K program, would that be okay? Because then it would feel like we're maintaining our connection better. And she was like, great. So I started a running program, and then by that time she had moved on into CrossFit, which scared the complete hell out of me and caused me to have to do a ton of shadow work. But now I've been at that nearly 3 years.
Great.
So I guess the point of this is to tie back to the SE. I am now at home in my body like I've never been before.
Oh my God. Do you feel more grounded just in general daily existence?
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. I can't even put it into words. I'm here now, almost all the time.
Awesome.
No, that's it. I bet we all have like similar and different stories around the SE blindness. Like I mentioned, I was raised by 3 SE heavy, parental figures. And my mom, she let us, we were like feral little kids. We just wandered the neighborhood constantly. And SE was I obviously didn't see it in those terms back then, but I look back on it. SE was a heavy, heavy part of my upbringing. I was off everywhere all the time, and I even like really enjoyed athletics as a kid. I thought I was a really fast runner. I ran long distance in high school. I bet you a lot of INFPs run long distance. If you were to take a picture,
I love running.
Country, and then I totally blew. And then I got into trail running as in my 20s and blew out my knees. And so now I just walk constantly. But I can walk. I could walk and walk. I could walk all day, every day.
I love walking.
I love walking. Swimming and biking were my SE things as a kid.
Right.
I did try. My sisters were in ballet, and I tried to do ballet, and that was not fun. That was not a good experience. Oh gosh! And not only is it just a very like SJ sport. I mean, it's just I don't know.
Good point.
Really I don't know if that's true or not, but it just feels
funny.
like it. But it's not very perceivers don't. I don't know. It was not very perceiver for me. But I didn't enjoy ballet, but I did like fun dancing. That would be fun, like if it was like free form. Swimming and biking, I could bike and swim all day. That's what I could feel and experience the world and be present in the world and still let my mind wander while I was doing those things, which was always so fun.
That's the key. That's what I love about walking. My thoughts are never more free and clear.
Never.
when I'm walking. Yeah. Marcel Proust has a great passage
Yeah.
in Juan's Way about it's the most INFP walking story you've ever heard.
What is it called?
Yeah.
Juan's Way, Marcel Proust, In Search of Lost Time.
Oh yeah. Okay.
The thing where he talks about his love of walking.
I love that you read Proust.
Oh my gosh, he's my favorite.
Walking is
absolute favorite.
Oh really?
Yeah, I feel if you ever
walking
heard,
is.
if you ever heard Virginia Woolf describe her feelings about Proust, it's somewhat similar.
Yeah.
She basically says, reading Proust makes me want to kill myself, which is kind of dark because of what she
Very
did.
Virginia Woolf.
But she just,
God.
the fact that she could never reach that level just depressed her to no end. And I feel like I feel that actually myself. Not that I want
Yeah,
to,
same here.
but I'm just saying, like, it almost makes me sad that I can't communicate so beautifully. Anyway, sorry, sidetrack.
I know, right?
Walking, yeah. Anyway,
walking is what triggers symbolism,
sorry,
metaphors.
Shreya.
It's the key. It's the key to unlocking everything, really.
Totally.
Walking is what creates all my stories.
Mm-hmm.
Does like a certain does it matter where you're walking?
Yeah, it does for me.
It does for me.
Yeah.
It does for me.
And that's
Okay,
what time
so
of day,
where?
you know.
Ooh, okay. Well, Shreya, like with the metaphors and all the like realizations that you come to while you're walking, do you like what is the ideal environment for you?
Oh yeah. About that actually. About a year ago, I got more into transcendentalism. I started reading a lot more Henry David Thoreau and the book Walden, and I started realizing I want to live more in the woods, the cottage life, and
Oh, heart.
that would be my ideal environment.
Okay, that's kind of what I was picturing, actually. Yeah.
I struggle. Like I lived on the East Coast for a few years, and
Me
it
too.
was so dense, and it was just not enough nature, and I struggled. I didn't really enjoy walking back then, but now, I live in the West now. I live in Utah, which is, as far as nature goes, quite beautiful, and so. I mean, there's all kinds of canyons and things near me, and I have a dog too, so that helps.
About the East Coast. About the East Coast. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was about to mention another thing that helped me realize that last year was that I started getting more into passenger pigeons. One of the most greatest things that ever lived on this earth. It was a biological hurricane. It was the aggregate of a passenger pigeon was the 1 million to 1 billion birds in a flock, and they lived over thousands of years. But they were killed by hunters in the 18th and 19th century in the span of 80 years. And that's what triggered my imagination a lot last year and made me realize fight for animal rights a lot more and fight for what we lost.
Wow.
In fact, I can show you a simulation of what a passenger pigeon flock would be like. And
yes,
it was similar to seeing the solar or lunar eclipse every day or every week.
Wow.
Whoa.
Is it like a murmuration or is it
a murmuration? Yeah. A murmuration, yes. Nice. I actually made a post last year, but I could link you guys in it after this is done.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
That and my foray into Henry David Thoreau and Walden. That's been the fulcrum of my life the past year.
Wow.
And realizing that we inhabited the same time space and fading to black, fading to grayscale, and imagine what those birds would have looked like today and how they would have reacted to humans and the pain and loss. It was a very feral feeling. It's that sort of authenticity that I look for in everyday life.
Yeah. That's really beautiful.
I forgot to mention one last thing. The passenger pigeons lived in the East Coast, so I would often imagine what it would be like to move back to places like Ohio, right, where I was born, or places like Detroit. That's where the passenger pigeon flocks would have been like. And the kids of the 1860s were the last ones to see that. Often imagine what it would be like to travel back into that time.
Yeah. And it makes me, I'm sorry if you've already articulated this, if I've spaced out or something, I don't mean to offend, but is there a modern day equivalent?
Yeah, it's called the band-tailed pigeon. like similar to the dodo. The dodo's common ancestor now is a Nicobar pigeon. But I started getting a lot more into de-extinction programs and researching a lot into that last March, April. Started getting more books. It's often in the mood.
Okay. Huh.
That I think every INFP has like
Yeah.
some just deep, nerdy, geeky thing that
Some
is
random
your
rabbit
thing,
hole.
and it is so. I mean, that nerdy is like a high praise.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like
thing that
watching
you this
any
guy
in its pomp. It's like watching a football counterattack.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna call it soccer. It's like watching a complete counterattack or a complete a gazelle completely moving and galloping in full motion. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
And
Can really see that.
yeah, RJ is right. Every INFP I know has some rabbit hole they're like stuck in.
Yeah, it's just
that we just
everybody else is
pour-
the most random thing, but to you it
Yeah.
is just your jam, man, and you just live it.
It's I relate heavily to everything, not just like how the passion and all the details that he knows about this thing, about the birds, and I just think that's beautiful. It's such such a testament to what FI and E and SI can do, and and you know they can become like really become experts, and then it really
Right.
affects our lives deeply.
Yeah, so my question for you guys is, where is your area of geeky expertness?
Gosh.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, I know.
That's
it's
how
like,
I feel.
what point
Yeah.
of my life? Like right now, it's definitely you know, like depth psychology has been a huge thing for me. But you know, like archetypes and all that kind of stuff. You know, the archetypal psychology, the alchemy, all that kind of stuff. That's been my nerdy deep dive of the last probably 5 or so years. Before that, it was creative writing, storytelling. Before that, it was architecture for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say mine's MBTI or
For me, it's
personality
more so-
style in general.
Yeah.
Psychology, history, and some of mine. I really literature is a big one for me, and I have specific sects of literature that I'm really obsessed with, and then it can even go to silly like dorky things like fandoms, fandoms.
Like I got people lost, you know, like I could listen to every podcast about like this. It's a stupid show, but like I just
one
did not like
episode of one
exactly. Like, remember Lost, this TV series? I mean,
Oh yeah.
like the I don't know. It just at that moment in time, it was super interesting to me. It wasn't like it's anything special, but yeah, the fandom thing. I think a lot of fan groups are heavy in INFP.
Yeah. So things like that. So it can be even like the dorkiest things. Like one of the things that I fell down a rabbit hole just recently was the Tudors. Just the Tudor period of history. Yeah. And I couldn't get enough of it. And I would watch documentaries of like the same like king or queen over and over and over again, like not the same documentaries, but the documentaries about that same person, just to get all the little different things. And then I would look up every little inaccuracy and try to like pull out what they didn't know and what was opinion and fact and objectivity and little things like that. And then I would want to like talk about it with people, and then it's like,
and they're like,
you aggressively care about this subject. I'm like,
this is I don't know if you guys read Marie-Louise von Franz, her book Lectures on Jungian Typology. She gives a little, she devotes a page or two to each of the types and a basic description, and in her particular description in that book, that she devotes a lot. If you consider how many words she devotes, spends a lot of time focusing on this aspect in particular, which is one that not many people tend to focus on with INFPs. She calls it the badger hole. They tend to sit in their badger hole and just devour information. It's the TE inferior, that I think drives a desire to just collect information and go as deeply with
Oh, same with SI compared with SI.
with that as well. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and like there's little things that that, like I said, I like to say they're silly, but they're really like genuinely important to me. Like one book I can read over and over again, trying to like piece it apart. I used to songs, listen to them over and over and over again. The other thing that I used to do as a kid was memorize Shakespeare, and just like I would read it over and over again. Then I would like a space cadet. I was this like 9-year-old quoting Shakespeare and walking around. And people are just like, "What is this child?"
I used to create code names. I used to sing. I used to draw.
So it's funny, like where our brains go, and then suddenly something gets triggered. I get a weird obsessive fascination with it, and then it's just all I think about for a while. So
you said code name Shreya.
Oh yeah, code name.
Shreya, am I saying your name right? Shreya.
Shreya.
You said you made code names.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
Basically acronyms and such, like playing detective and making my own games, etc., etc.
Yeah, like inventing like a whole complete cosmos with names and all that sort of stuff. And
I love that. That's so fun.
I used to I when I was in like my preteen, early teen years, I created like my own hieroglyphics, like like a little weird language and my own like I wasn't disciplined enough to learn about astrology, like actually read it in the book.
I was into astrology 5 years ago.
I just made up my own, I was like, I'll just make my own. And I would like had this whole mythos, with this random collection of that I saw. I thought I invented Cassiopeia. It wasn't called Cassiopeia. I didn't know that's what it was until like years later.
I had a whole alternate life that I pretended I had. It was really odd. Like it was like a whole world I had created. I was this person in this story, and I would act it out by myself when I was in my room alone.
Yeah, me too.
And then
me too.
Yeah, and so I would do that, and it was kind of oddball. So when people would like come and interrupt it, I would actually be quite annoyed. It was
me
like,
too.
Because it was like they were penetrating into something that was like, this is my time for this, and I'm in this right now, so like to take me out of it was really frustrating. And what's really cute is I look back at those times and I'm like, that was a genuinely fun time for me, that I could do that. And there was a language I created. I look back on my journals and I'm like, cringe, but it was something I was genuinely trying to make happen.
Yeah, I remember when I was a little kid, I'd go in the backyard and I would have like 2-hour-long like dreaming sessions where I would, move around the backyard, and each space was like a different room or different thing was happening. I had this whole like play that would unfold. And I remember once, it's kind of similar to you. Like I remember, because it's stuck in my memory, it's so embarrassing to me. Like I looked up and I saw the neighbor looking out the window at me. I was like, they've seen me in this space all this whole time. And I must look like such an idiot, like wandering around, but it felt like such intrusion. I had been in like deep in that world for like 2 hours.
Me too.
Okay, I have a really funny story that's a lot like that, where you're not realizing and then somebody's watching. Okay, so I was like just driving. We were driving in the car, and I was sitting right next to the window, and we were parked. We're not parked. We were at a stoplight, and I was looking out the window, and I was intense in dream world. Like I was in it, and then I look over and I see that I'm staring directly over at the guy next to us, and he was like an adult and I was little, and he looks at me and smiles, and I was, how children kind of get like intimidated by adults. So I was like, he smiled, and I was like, and I rolled up the window, and he was like,
rude.
I know, but it was like, I didn't realize I was looking at him, and I was not ready for that social exchange.
It's like everybody's about needing to get out of here then.
Yeah. A bit
hey, sorry to like
awkwardly soon.
But I love that. It's nice to talk to you guys.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
Thanks, Joyce.
same.
Thank you guys for coming on the show. You guys are a complete pleasure to talk to. I love talking about these esoteric, nerdy topics that you guys know a lot about. It really enriches my view of many different subjects. Now I feel like I know the INFP world, and it's full of these terms that I have no idea what they mean, but they're really cool. Yeah, like, so big thumbs up to, this whole time together. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for
Yeah,
this.
this is
like,
awesome.
Thank you so much.
yeah, it was so fun getting to know you all. You guys are wonderful, and I have you guys all linked below. Whatever you provide me, it's all over there. And yes, and thank you, viewers, for watching this entire episode. You have the stamina of a very high stamina person. I'm very creative, as you see now.
Finale's world.
Joyce, you're darling.
So yeah.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. I'm sure you've enriched the viewers a lot, and thank you, viewers, for watching this far. You are very dedicated and wonderful. And bye, guys.
Bye. Nice to talk to everybody.